freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same. And if you and I don't do this, then you and I may well spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it once was like in America when men were free.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode number 465 of Gun Freedom Radio, where we engage, we educate, and we inform. We are brought to you by azfirearmsauctions.com, where you set the price on guns, ammo, and accessories. I am one of your hosts, Cheryl Todd.
And I'm the other guy, Dan Todd. Our theme today is 2A and the courts. Our guest is Theresa Inacker. Theresa has been the attorney for more than 24 years, is a New Jersey State Director for Women of Gun Rights, and is a trustee of the Executive Board for the Coalition of New Jersey Firearms Owners.
That's a mouthful.
Theresa is admitted to practice law in the states of New York and New Jersey, the United States District Court of the District of New Jersey, and the Supreme Court of the United States. And I just have to say, Theresa, what a tough job you have. I mean, you picked the worst states for to deal with laws.
Well,
Yes.
Welcome to the show, Theresa.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Yes, New Jersey is pretty much the roughest place for gun rights, but you learn really fast, and you try to help your friends in other states as they start going through things that you've been through already.
Yes.
Boy, that's the case, and thank goodness for you. So, I titled this show The 2A in the Courts because there is a sometimes contentious relationship between the Second Amendment and the courts, which, is a head scratcher because right away we can refer right back to our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, and say, okay, here's your foundation. Just interpret this. It shouldn't be hard. But then recently we had this huge case that everybody knows as the Bruen case, right? That the Supreme Court ruled on. And it seems like because of that ruling, it should have really kind of taken away a lot of the confusion and streamlined how the courts are interpreting Second Amendment issues. And it feels like we're more confused than we were before. Can you kind of make sense out of any of that for us?
Yes, we are facing, judicial activism really when it comes to our 2A rights. There are many courts, excuse me, that are resistant to the Bruen decision. Bruen gave us some really bright lines on how to test if a law is constitutional or not. And, if it's not, basically, the burden shifts to the government to prove that it's consistent with the clear language of the Second Amendment. And if it isn't, that it was at the time of the founding, that, we have a history of this at the time of the founding. And so we're faced with all these issues. In many of the cases in New Jersey, we filed about every kind of case you can imagine, and they're pending for a long, long time. So the lower courts are very resistant, and they're also, I think they know their backs against the wall because Bruen is in our favor. And so what they are doing is delaying. They're using dilatory tactics. And that's really what it's doing, is undermining the faith people have in the court system. I speak with people every day about this, and they want to know why. We've been under, in New Jersey, in one case, Coons and Siegel, we've been under an emergency stay basically since the spring of 2023. We've been waiting for the Third Circuit Court of Appeals, which is that mid-level right below the Supreme Court. We've been waiting for the Third Circuit Court of Appeals to issue a decision. It'll be 1 year at the end of October. And this has to do with the sensitive places where we can carry. So after Bruen, states that were outliers, and New Jersey was one of those states that was actually listed in the Bruen decision as being an outlier for not allowing us to carry. The state starts issuing, reluctantly, carry permits. And so they reacted by saying, you can't carry anywhere, and you can't carry They tried, this vampire rule where you'd need the permission of every single property owner before you went there. You couldn't carry in your own car. You couldn't carry anywhere. I mean, even in your own car. This is after the states issued you a permit. So do
Wow.
they not believe in the integrity of their own permitting system, their own background system? You just checked me and you just issued the permit. Now you're saying I can't carry anywhere. So of course, in Coons, Koons, and Siegel, these are sort of twin cases that were filed on the same day, trying to address the sensitive places issue. We were lucky enough to get an emergency stay, a preliminary injunction on some of it at the district court level, but it's been pending, we're talking more than a year now. We've been on an emergency stay. It's not meant to be this way.
Exactly.
And we're not getting the relief we need at the courts, so they're delaying. I think when they can't rule against us outright without looking ridiculous, which has happened recently as well, they'll delay. So we are suffering from some pretty poorly written decisions. There was another one called Cheeseman versus Platkin, that in New Jersey, a Judge Sheridan, and just in July 2024 issued a decision, the assault weapons ban case, and also a magazine limit case. And the decision was pretty poorly written, if I might say so. And I don't usually, say that kind of thing about, when a court issues an opinion, but it was a little bit confusing. He said that it was, the assault weapons ban was unconstitutional as to the Colt AR-15 rifle at home only, and nothing else on our long list of so-called assault weapons. And it was just very confusing, I think, for both sides to even figure out what the judge was doing. It was issued as he retired. Seemed to be like he just kicked it out the door when he left and didn't really care. So there's some issues with just, the delays and just poorly written decisions, confusion, and a lot of it is on purpose because Bruen is so clear, I think, that they're just grappling with how to continue what they've done, which was thwart our efforts to exercise our rights. And they'd like to continue that, but we're not allowing them to do that. We're holding their feet to the fire, but it's costly. You have to find attorneys who can take these cases, groups who can fund these cases, plaintiffs who will step up and be named in these cases. And so there's, it's a resource issue as well. And the government has endless resources because they take our tax dollars to do these things against us, right? So yeah, the state of the courts after Bruen has been pretty much a mess. There's a couple more too, if you want to.
Yeah,
You want.
please.
We recently filed in New Jersey a case, CNJFO, as you said, it's a mouthful, Coalition of New Jersey Firearm Owners. CNJFO partnered with Gun Owners of America, GOA, in a case called Benton, BENTON. So it's Benton and CNJFO and GOA against the state. And this has to do with the abuses in the permitting process. We have some towns that they're supposed to issue their permits quite quickly, and they won't issue the permits going on months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months. Now it's about also like this duplication in the process. You have to have a New Jersey Firearms purchase ID card. That's a basic card if you want to purchase long guns, right? If you want to purchase handguns, you have to get an additional permit called a permit to purchase a handgun. That's in addition to the FPID that I just mentioned. And you can only use one of those a month. You can only buy one gun a month with a permit to purchase a handgun. Yeah. Yeah. So if you're at the shop and you've purchased two, you can only take possession of one and come back a month later and run the next check and wait for that, by the way, which is sometimes a week here, our next check. So everything is about delay. And it's just the only tactic they have left, really, right? So this Benton case has challenged one gun a month, which I think is a very strong challenge. I think, there's absolutely no evidence that at the time of the founding that you needed a permit and it was one gun a month. There's just no basis for it. So the hopes are that this will be a very strong quite easily, low-lying
Mm-hmm.
fruit, as we say, to pick off. And
Mm-hmm.
then the duplication in the process, the FPID, the permit to purchase a handgun, then you have to do the purchase point of sale, NICS check on top of it. And if you have a permit to carry, you still have to go back and get another permit to purchase a handgun. So if I want to purchase a new handgun, and I see your faces, it tells it all, right?
Oh,
If I,
I need
right,
a
if I have a
permit to
permit,
get a permit to get a permit. Is that what you're
yes,
saying?
yes.
Oh
And
my
then at
gosh.
each level, they can delay it and drag it out. Plus, they charge you money every time, as you might imagine. And so the people here are very frustrated, and we consider it abuse. So at this point, it was time to challenge it. We have years worth of data showing these delays and abuses, and so anyway, that's the newest case that we filed. We just filed that about, I don't know, a month or two ago in
So
federal
wait a
court.
minute, I'm looking at the Second Amendment, and there was a paragraph that's been removed. Thou shall only be allowed to buy one gun a month. It's
That's
so
right.
silly, it's so crazy. But Teresa, why can't somebody challenge the courts that are delaying and their deliberate delays? Can that be taken to the Supreme Court? That
The delay
the
itself.
delay. I mean, you have more than one. It's obvious.
Right. I suppose that, what would happen is somebody could make a challenge. And I think FPC made a challenge last year. They tried to expedite some sort of appeal. And the Supreme Court said, we hear you, we see what's going on, but you have to wait. And so there's respect for the lower courts, there's respect for the system. And so what would happen is if somebody just tried to jump to the SCOTUS and say, let's hear this now, Third Circuit, we're sick of listening, waiting for you to do something.
Mm-hmm.
The Supreme Court's just going to say, you really have to wait for them to issue the decision, right? So it's and we want it to be on the merits. Like, we're all about the merits, right? Because we have merit on our side.
Yeah.
So we want this to be on the merits. Let's do this, right? And they would love for us to just play with procedural stuff all day long, because then they get to skate by and never address the merits of the case, the merits of what the state's doing to us.
Mm-hmm.
So unfortunately, I just don't see it being a viable remedy. But obviously, we can speak up, and the people speak up and say, we're just so sick and tired of it. And all it does is undermine their sort of like their reputation with common people that don't understand how courts work. They do feel very affected by this. And I believe it was in a Maryland case that the court held it for like about a year or something, and then all they did was just punt it right back. And it was like a very dirty tactic. It was an extremely dirty tactic. And so there was some criticism for that. And it might have been the Bianchi case. I'm not exactly sure off the top of my head.
Mm-hmm.
So
well,
yeah,
I have to point out the humor of, if you brought a case and said, we're tired of the delays, and the answer from the Supreme Court is, well, you have to wait. Delays and wait, right?
Yeah.
It's
So
like
Right,
a bad punchline.
What
I
bothers me
know.
about this is the fact that, New Jersey is closest to the roots of the Constitution. Out of all the states, they're one of the closest ones, and they're abusing the Constitution as we speak.
We may have actually been the first state to ratify the Constitution, I think, which is, and somebody needs to fact check me on that, but maybe I'm just dreaming it. But I think that we were, and it's like we have just come so far from it. But it's really just ideologues who've dug in and refused to acknowledge our rights. And, we're a peaceable people, and the people who are engaged in the Second Amendment community in New Jersey are the best people you're ever going to meet. But we do feel like we're constantly on the defense, and it's very, you got to keep the morale of the troops going, right? So I mean, at least with the Benting and the CNJFO case, we went on the offense for something. We're not actually just responding. At the sensitive places, the Coons and Siegel cases, those are reactions to a large bill that they passed, to try to obviously curtail us from carrying in public. I mean, there was nowhere you couldn't even walk down the street. We asked them, tell us one place that we can actually carry. And it would, it was just ridiculous. So I think until the politicians are personally liable, I think until they're held personally liable for the things that they do, we're not going to see a change. In this state, they're not personally liable. So they know they're violating the Constitution, and they don't really care. We had a politician once say, well, it's constitutional until a court tells us it isn't. And they know that
Wow.
that process is going to take you years,
Yes.
right?
Well, what did the governor say about the Constitution in New Jersey?
It
It's
was above his
his
pay
pay
grade.
grade.
Yeah.
The Bill of Rights.
Unreal.
Yeah.
Unreal.
Yeah.
So, when you were talking about that permitting, and basically a permit is a permission slip, right? We've got to go to somebody. Oh, please, sir, please, ma'am, may I, right? Have access to my rights. So it's a permission-based system, and you are trusting someone else who doesn't know you, doesn't have your life history, to give you permission, whether or not you can carry a tool that will defend and protect life. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but a good friend of ours, his name is Tony Simon. He's been a regular guest on the show over the years. He puts on the Second Amendment is for everyone shoots to help train citizens. I think it was he that put out a video that showed that there were clear racist practices taking place in that permission-based system
Yes.
right now, today, in the year 2024.
Yes. Yes. So in the permitting process for carry, you need to have 4 references right now, which is ridiculous. So that's, hey, best friend, can you give me a reference? And they can call. Some places are interviewing people in person. But what's happening is some denials are happening based upon this sort of like amorphous or this ambiguous standard called like safety, public safety, the matters of public safety. And they had tried to put this in the bill before, and it was called known to the community. If somebody was known to the community, what does that mean? Known to the community, right? So any kind of subjective standard, if it's a subjective standard, that's where they run afoul of Bruen. Bruen is to be objective, right? In New York, in the Bruen case, they were required to prove that they had a need to carry. And in New Jersey, we had to have justifiable need. Imagine that. I'd have to prove to a government entity justifiable need. And there were people that had been victims of kidnappings that did not have justifiable need, right? So someone is making a subjective decision about what is best for your life. And Bruen took that away. Bruen makes it objective. And so what's happening is, at a very high rate, they are denying people on this ambiguous subjective standard for matters of public safety. I believe that John Petrolino has written a big article about that and done some research, some FOIA type research in New Jersey. It's called Oprah, to find out, what were these denials, how many of them, and on what basis. And he said the impacts are against colors, communities of color. And he's asked the Attorney General to address this. And the Attorney General, who is the chief law enforcement officer in our state, has not addressed that. We want that addressed as well. It's ridiculous. So it's just a battle on so many fronts, and it's almost like it could be overwhelming. Like, how many battles on so many fronts can you fight at one time? It's like, wow, this system is terrible, and it's racist, and this system there's delays, and we got to fight them in the courts, and now they're coming up with a new law, and we'll have to run down to Trenton and testify against it. And all in the while, you still have to, train and qualify for your permit and all these other things. We've gone through some pretty terrible bumps in the road with what they wanted us to do, the FBI qualifications, and there were no exemptions for people with disabilities. There were no, so, you had to do offhand shooting. And one of my friends who's a trainer had an individual who was born without a left hand. And so he would not be allowed to qualify because there was no exemption for the fact that he couldn't do an offhand shoot. And all I could do is really hit the AG on Twitter, X, and say, your training requirements, maybe if you actually consulted with us in this community about what the impact was going to be, instead of demonizing us all the time, maybe you would understand a little bit about what people are going through out here. Consult some trainers, some people who actually do this for a living, that sort of thing. And instead, they'd rather demonize us. And in the process, what they're doing is they're making it difficult, like I said, there's racial impacts, there's impacts on people who are disabled.
Mhm.
They wanted us to get down on our knees and behind the barrels and all that kind of stuff. And it was outrageous. So, yeah, they'll do anything to stop us. Meanwhile,
Lisa, you're disappointing me. I mean,
She's not disappointing us.
no,
Her state is
this is
disappointing
it.
us.
But what country did you say New Jersey's in?
yeah,
Because
some of
none
us
of
actually,
I mean, if you're not even some will argue this, but if you're not a felon, you get a permit for a gun.
right,
Period. I mean, if you're not, you haven't committed a crime, you get a permit. It's not because you're black or white or because you own a jewelry store or whatever. That's the way it should be, and it's so depressing to me. And it's
yeah,
like, you want to tell people like get out of New Jersey, but yet you need to go to New Jersey to fight this thing because
right.
it bleeds.
Yes, it's like a virus that spreads. So we have to be careful. Sometimes we think we are like the petri dish of that they try things out here on us. And they want to also see how much you'll resist these things. And so I think, especially with Bruen, I try to remind the authorities sometimes when we engage on Twitter and that sort of thing is that Bruen is the law and you are breaking the law. Bruen's
Yes.
the law. I'm on the right side of the law. You're not. When you try to take away my rights, you're not on the side of the Constitution. You're not on the side of Bruen and all the other cases. And so that they need to come in compliance with the law. And it's kind of ironic that the people are out here telling our government, you need to get in compliance with the law. But they kind of finger point, and of course they want to blame you and they conflate us with criminals, right? I mean,
Yep.
we're all the same. There's no difference between a gangster and somebody who has a carry permit in their minds. Like we're all the same. And yeah, you've got to keep the faith, we got to hold on to each other and keep the
Yeah.
faith, so it's a process.
Yeah, people from other
Absolutely.
states need to get involved too. I mean, we all need to be involved because again, like you said, the Petri dish, they're seeing what they can get away with.
Yeah.
And that's what they're doing. And the fact that people in legislation, they have no, it doesn't matter to them.
Mm-mm.
Nothing happens to them. There's no
Mhm.
consequences for
Mhm.
that. And
Right.
even some of the judges, there's no consequences if we hold this case for a year. What are you going to do?
Mhm.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's I always say we have to work within the three branches. We have to do that. That's the way our system is designed. And so we have to work it and we work them hard, I mean,
Yeah.
we really do, right? So in some states it is difficult. We try to, we need more people to run for office. There's
Mhm.
somebody who's sponsored, this horrible bill where we can't carry anywhere. Somebody should, step up and run against him. And maybe
Mhm.
they don't have a chance in his district. And he was probably chosen to be the sponsor of the bill because they knew he was in a very secure
Mhm.
district and he would never get voted out. But, we still have to try. So you have
Mhm.
to vote, you have to run for office, you've got to file cases, you have to contribute, you have to step up as plaintiffs, that sort of thing. Make those phone calls to the governor. Don't sign this bill. This is, a piece of garbage, and make your
Mhm.
voices known. We do that. We do these calls, tell our community, hey, time to send an email blast to like every member
Yes.
of the legislature. So we tried every step, show up to testify. I've been doing that for almost 15 years now, and I've seen some real uh shenanigans. I've seen people
Mhm.
thrown out and just all kinds of stuff. They cut people off, there's no time. Um it's really despicable, a lot of it. It really is. And we
Absolutely.
do our
Well,
best.
speaking of that, testifying, you mentioned John Petrolino, who is another awesome friend of ours, who's a great member of media who actually tells the truth about our side of the story. I believe those two paths crossed in some testimony that you gave. Correct me if I'm wrong. And every single person who testified that day, when you go and you pull the records, there's a audio recording of everything they said, except for one person who was
Me.
you.
They
Yeah.
took it out.
Lucky you.
Yeah, it disappeared. So when I started, I state my name, and next thing you know, it disappears for like 3 minutes. My testimony's gone. And then it comes back on at the end, and he did an open request. I did a request. I tried to track it down through my elected representatives in my district and said, what happened to my testimony here? And I was actually going to pull my testimony to use it as an example for another project. And they said, can we have an example of your testimony? And so I was going to pull that to use this as, evidence for another project, and it was gone. So I discovered it, just randomly. They said that I must have turned off the audio equipment. Well, I'm
Right.
sitting at a table. I'm not anywhere near the audio equipment. There is nothing but a microphone there, and it's dead silent. So, and actually it was broadcast and it was broadcast live through our legislature on their website. Someone had called me right afterward and said, hey, I heard your testimony. That was awesome. Well, so I know it was broadcast, and so
Right.
you heard it through a microphone. So
Yes.
it disappeared, and they had no excuse. That mystery's never been solved. But I was able to get them to not, at that time, not force a renewal of that firearms purchase ID card every 4 years. That's what they wanted to do. They also wanted anyone who inherited a firearm to obtain a firearms purchase ID card within 30 days of the death of, say, their spouse. And so you could have a widow who inherits a bunch of, I don't know, rifles or something for World War II. And they're in the attic. She doesn't even know they're there, maybe. And that she would be a felon if she didn't get a
Oh,
FPID within 30 days.
oh my
And so
gosh.
I was like, do we have a widow crime problem in this state? What's your problem? And just basically went off on them and said, you can't even issue a permit within 30 days. And now you're going to
Yeah.
put it on the people to get one in 30 days. I'm like, she's not even going to get a fingerprint appointment in 30 days. And so they scrapped it. And there was some good questions back and forth, and it worked out all right. But yeah, for some reason they just zapped me out.
So all the legislatures
Sneaky.
in New Jersey, I just want you to know that in Arizona, we do have limits on how many guns you can buy. It's limited to how much money you have. And so if you need to buy 100 guns, you can. And yet, and we don't need a permit to carry a gun concealed in Arizona. And yet our crime is basically way, way low compared to any of the cities that require these things. So just keep that in mind. I mean, if you really want to think about
Yeah.
it, I could go buy
Yeah.
100 guns today.
Yeah, the
Wouldn't even
issue
be
of
flattened.
permitless.
Yeah.
Yeah. The issue of constitutional carry or permitless carry comes up, and we think like more and more as more states have permitless carry, like states like New Jersey they have this stranglehold on this process. And it's like, when are you going to learn? Like you are the outliers once again, just like you were called in Bruen. So I definitely, admire you folks. And I'd say it's great that you fight to hold on to it. That's very important. You
Well,
must be vigilant. You
be
must.
careful though, because we are we're on a shoestring right now, just barely hanging on, because we have an elected governor now that's vetoed every good bill and passed every bad bill about firearms. And so it's we're getting close. And it's because
Yes.
people don't get off their butt and do something about it. Just a simple email, just a simple phone call, just a simple vote, just a simple something.
Absolutely. You must be involved, and you can't. We find here there are some people that say, well, somebody else will do it. Teresa will do it because I'll do it, but you need to do it too. You can't
Yes.
just keep putting it on somebody else. It's time to, absolutely get involved, because it's more than just about us. This is for our children, right? And your grandchildren. And I'm not going to be the one that allowed this to go down. I'm just not. We even wonder here in New Jersey sometimes, like, how did we get to this place? Like, how did we get here? Why didn't they object? Why wasn't anything done? And under my watch, I won't allow it to get worse. We'll fight. So
Well, thank goodness
Yes.
for you. I just wanted to ask you, and you may have already touched on this in everything we just said, but so we always want to rely on our federal Bill of Rights, our federal constitution. But in Arizona, we have our own constitution and Bill of Rights that specifically mentions our right to keep and bear arms. And the language is even a little bit stronger than it is in the federal, where it's shall not be infringed federally, it shall not be impaired, which is a stronger legal word for our Arizona. Is there such a provision in New Jersey?
nope, nope, it's missing. We don't have that in our Constitution. So it weakens, it weakens the argument on the state level. And the state courts, you know, uh, we just don't do well as far as 2A rights in the state courts. So anytime, and you'll see this, the attorneys that file the cases, they're going into federal court for a reason. It's very easy because it's a federal matter, right? This is our constitutional rights, our civil rights, and that sort of thing. But the state obviously wants to play in state court because it's their home, their home base, their homies, So, but for us, we definitely have to move it out to federal court, and we do not have any provision in New Jersey for 2A.
And I'm not sure, I may be saying this wrong, but like you said, in New Jersey, the Attorney General is the chief law enforcement.
Yeah.
In Arizona, the Sheriff's Department is the chief law enforcement, and they're elected officials. And so we do have an Attorney General, but I don't know him as chief law enforcement.
Well, it's a her right now.
Right.
Miss
But
Meigs,
I think
yeah.
it's, but so we have a Sheriff Department, and depending on the sheriff at the time, but some of them say they will not support a non-constitutional bill, or,
Right.
they won't enforce it. But anyway, I
Right.
think that's the first step, is that your Attorney General is the main guy. And I don't
Yeah.
know that that's a good thing.
Yeah, the governor appoints the attorney general here in New Jersey. I'm not quite sure how it works in other states. And our sheriffs, we do have sheriffs on the county level, but typically they're in charge of like the county jails, that sort of thing. They don't have any kind of, like, if I have a problem here, a robbery or something like that, the sheriff does not get involved at all. So what would happen in the town I live, and I actually live in the woods. You might find this hard to believe. We have woods here. And I live in a rural area in New Jersey. They do exist. And we don't even have our own police department. So we have to call the New Jersey State Police in our area, and they cover like a territory. So, and this is where, sometimes we're trying to explain to people why we want to be armed, where we live, and maybe there's animal issues, or you're just very isolated. The police, we don't even have a police department. And they'll just start thinking about people that live in the big cities, or they're really tight in the suburbs, and they don't understand why you can't wait for the police to get there. Well, with all due respect, that's my decision on what I need to do to defend myself.
Exactly.
And, not for anybody else to say. So, but yeah, the structure of your government can really affect, it really can affect you down the line.
Theresa, how long does it take for law enforcement to get to your house when you call them?
I had called them because there was a car fire and somebody was banging on my door late at night, and it took the police 11 minutes to get here. There was a volunteer EMT fire department gal who rolled up in her own personal car pretty quickly, like within 4 or 5 minutes. But yeah, it woke me up in the middle of the night. I banged on my door, and I heard voices. I heard there was a crowd. What happened was a teenager flipped his car, and several of them got in an argument, and some of them got picked up and some got left behind. So I had heard the voices, and I thought, there's like a group of people on my lawn. And I'm like, wow, I've been waiting for this moment, right? Like, am I prepared? It's very, especially when you're just waking up out of being asleep. And I was like, I hear voices. It's, it's like 12:30 at night. I don't know. It was very interesting. It took them 11 minutes to get there. But it was a fire and EMT situation. And they do come to support. So I don't know that they were giving it their all. I don't know what their protocol is on how fast they are supposed to get there when it's like an accident or something.
Well, I've been in almost every state, and the only time I've ever been afraid was when I was in New Jersey.
But that was in Atlantic
And I'm not
City.
kidding you. I was in Atlantic City, and I'll tell you, I didn't show her at that time, but I was terrified. And so, I just don't get it. People should be able to defend themselves. You can't wait 4 minutes for law enforcement. You are the first responder, and that's bottom line. And you can't wait, and you should be able to defend yourself. If you do something wrong, then you're going to be responsible for that. But I'm so sorry to hear that you got such a fight ahead of you. Just you have to start at the top and get that governor out. He has to go. Yeah.
And we need candidates that are, that are going to support our cause as well. So,
well, I want to clear that, though. I need to clear it because I said he needs to go. He needs to be voted out of office. I want to make that clear.
Yes.
He needs to be voted out of office.
Carefully.
He can be exported to another country if he wants to live that way, but He
Oh,
needs
he
to
has a,
go.
a villa in Italy. He's there all the
He
time.
needs to. He
So
needs to be there all the time.
yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
this guy, he is just a whole bag of tricks, isn't he?
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Well, you wear so many hats, as we said in the introduction. New Jersey State Director for Women for Gun Rights. I'm the Arizona State Director for Women for Gun Rights. And you also want to add to your list of uh things that you do, boards you serve on. And I don't say sit on because you don't sit on any boards, you serve.
Thank you.
You are seeking to join the NRA Board of Directors. Talk to us about
Yes.
that journey, why that feels like an important piece of this work you do,
Yes.
and what others can do to help you with that journey.
Well, thank you. I spoke with Amanda Suffolk, who's on the NRA board. She's also our sister
Ohio.
in
Yes.
Women for Gun Rights.
Mhm.
And so she and I talked about it, and I decided that I was going to put my hat in the ring for the NRA Board of Directors. And you have to go through one of two ways. Nominations committee is going to typically put the incumbents back in, which is what happened when they last met, or you can get on by petition. And to get on by petition, you need 400 or so signatures from life members or those who have 5 years of consecutive membership in the NRA. They can sign this petition, it has their number on it, their name, address, and signature. And if you get enough valid signatures, you can get on the ballot. So this is just to even get on the ballot. And then, of course, I need people to vote for you if you get on the ballot. So we're about halfway through the month now. We started in the beginning of September. And, we're halfway through the month. We still have 2 more weeks or so to gather signatures, and that's what I'm looking to do. So
What changes do you think need to be made with the NRA, if you don't mind asking, Teresa?
yeah, I'm with the reform team. So there definitely is, like, the old guard needs to leave, and they need to be compliant with what the court is trying to also get them to make changes.
So, Teresa, you mentioned that you need about 400 signatures and there's a deadline looming, right? We are in the studio on September 17th, 2024. When is your deadline and what's your strategy for gathering these signatures?
I have to get them to the headquarters. I have to verify all of the names and get this to headquarters, the original documents, by the first week of October. So I've been asking people to get these originals to me by September 30th, by the end of September. That will give me time to verify what I need to verify, because the numbers and the names have to match, that sort of thing. And, package it up and get it to headquarters. So we have, little less than 2 weeks left, I guess, here to get this done and get them mailed to my house. So that's what we've been doing in New Jersey. Locally, we've got them out at ranges and gun shops. And I just attended a Friends of the NRA dinner on Saturday, and we circulated it there, and it was wonderful. So, locally, absolutely, I can drive and pick them up and drop them off. But out there in the rest of the country, I do need people, my friends, to circulate the petition. I have Dropbox links where someone can just print out a sheet at home and fill it out and then send it to me. I have a Google Docs link as well. So if somebody prefers to use that, and they can just print the petition out. I am working with a reform team right now. So that team there's 3 other guys who are also circulating petitions, and I'm circulating theirs and they're circulating mine. So of course my friends are signing mine, and I appreciate that. And then I say, while you're at it, could you try to drop a signature? Do you have time to do that for these other folks as well? And so I have links to their petitions, and it's just a mutual thing where we're trying to, cross circulate them, because we're from different parts of the country as well. So, it'd be hard for me to get somebody in North Carolina to sign in. It'd be easy for one of them to do it because they're there. So we've
Absolutely.
been circulating them in all various methods, and I'd be willing to send anybody a copy as well if they wanted to do that. I'd appreciate the support. And I think it's
Absolutely.
time for some new people to get involved there, and to restore the confidence in the membership. I'm a life member, and we all can admit that we think that, wow, there's something really toxic going on there, and we don't like it, and it weakens us. And we
Yeah.
need to not be weak. We're out here fighting for our
Yes.
lives. We are fighting and giving everything we have. And the last thing you need is for to give the ante something to criticize you about that has nothing to do with the substance of what you're fighting.
Look at 1968, the 1968 Gun Control Act. The NRA has been compromising ever since that even before then probably, but, and, you know, we've compromised and compromised and compromised. And if you compare our laws to what the Constitution is, almost all the laws need to be thrown out.
Yes.
Almost all of them.
Bruen.
And-
Yes.
Right. But
Absolutely.
the thing is, we have to be a no compromise. It's got to the
Absolutely.
point. Either we get it, we get it all taken back, or we don't win at all, but we fight.
Right.
So-
I'm an advocate for 2A, period. Like I can't say that for everybody else who's on that board. And I think that's the challenge. And it's like, are they really afraid of me? And it's like, then what side are you on? So we need to, let's refocus here. Let's restore the credibility and everything that needs the accountability, the credibility, the focus.
Exactly. Well, in our household, we have 3 life members. We have all 3 signed your petition, and I mailed it off. I think when I sent it, my daughter didn't have her number, but we have that now, so I'll get that to you off
I
air.
received it, and I was able to call and get her number. So it's great. We're able to call in with somebody's name and address, and they'll give us the number if you don't know it.